my name's Sive Bresnahan, and I work as the Training and Education Officer with COLOV. COLOV is the Irish Association for Development Workers and Volunteers. We've been running for 40 years, and I guess our emphasis is around education, training and support for people preparing or thinking about and or preparing to go and work overseas, and also for those who return home.
As part of COLOV's involvement in the EU Aid Volunteer Initiative, we thought a best place that COLOV would talk about a little bit of their experience of pre-departure training and the volunteer preparation that's needed before their placement. So could you tell me a bit about why pre-departure training and volunteer preparation is so important?
I guess from our perspective, there's different areas of preparation. So definitely one area would be around that preparation that's required within the remit of your specific role. It might be child safeguarding, it might be other kinds of policies that are important that you know about before you engage in the work that you're going to do. But for us, pre-departure, we take a wider lens. So really looking at the preparation that's required for somebody who's going to be both working and living in a really, really different new context, and particularly within this kind of North-South exchange context, which is the case of the EU Volunteer Aid Initiative. So the preparation then it goes a bit deeper, and it's about, I suppose, recognising that the volunteer will be living and working in a new place, and that presents possibilities for real challenges and difficulties, but also real opportunities for mutual cross-cultural learning, and also possibilities that the volunteer might deepen their understanding of global development challenges. So how to optimise that window that comes with this volunteer living and working in such a new and different context.
You mentioned that the volunteer, because they're living and working in a new environment, a lot of challenges will present themselves. So what are kind of the main issues that are essential to cover in the pre-departure training that could maybe mitigate some of these challenges?
So I guess, like I was saying, there's kind of a couple of aspects. There's the health and safety stuff that's important. Do I have the right vaccinations? Have I got the insurance cover I need, etc. But again, the lens that we place it goes a little bit deeper. So I could say that there's two parts to it. One part would be looking at the volunteer looking at their self. So, and this is recognition that volunteers will have different motivations for signing up for these kinds of projects. And that sending it organisations, it's important to be mindful about the different motivations, but also for the volunteer to actually put a little bit of time into reflecting what's motivating me here. And it can be a really valuable exercise, just giving yourself that time or being allowed that time to reflect on what the motivations are. And linked to that is the expectations. So if these are my motivations, what are the expectations I have as I step into this role and as I step into this opportunity? And the other part of it is self-care, linked to that reflection on self. So you're going to be taking up a new job, you're going to be working in a new environment, or the sending organisations are facilitating people to take up these new jobs in new environments. So just bringing awareness to, when I do feel stressed or when I do feel challenged, what do I do to look after myself, and kind of bring a little bit of awareness to that. Just again, so that I have that little toolbox with me. We all have it, but just bringing some awareness to it, so that you have it ready to draw on in this new position and in this new place. The other part, though, is, I guess, is exploring my existing frames of reference as a volunteer. Again, looking about how the sending organisation can play a role in that. And what do I mean by frames of reference? It's about, again, taking some time to think about those things that we sometimes don't think about or just take for granted, that are given. And that is, what is for example, our perspective on development, our existing perspective on what development is, what development should look like. There's many different perspectives on what development is and what it should look like. So as a volunteer, what understanding am I bringing to that? And is it, once I have invested some time in thinking about that, I'm better able to recognise when others are bringing different perspectives or different understandings. A second part of of this frames of reference aspect is difference, or thinking about difference. So even within my existing context as a volunteer, before I go away anywhere, how do I experience difference? How do I engage with difference? And again, bringing awareness to that, because once you have an awareness of that, you're preparing yourself to meet difference in another context, and that's really, really important, particularly in this north-south exchange scenarios. Thirdly, as part of that frames of reference, you're looking at images and messages. It's a really, really vital component of the education content that we work with. So if I have images, messages in my mind about this place that I might be travelling to, that I might be working in? What are those images and messages that I've received or that have shaped my understanding of this place, even if it's in my imaginary? And what has shaped that understanding? And is there any way in which that understanding has to be unpacked a little bit before I go away? Because particularly when it comes to Global South, we here in the North have been bombarded and are continuing bombarded with a lot of stereotyping and a lot of negative imagery and messaging around the peoples, places, geographies, histories of the Global South. And it's important, again, as part of a preparation phase, for volunteers to be allowed that space to think. You know, what has shaped my understanding to date, and is there any way that I can begin to unpack that before I go away? And once I am deployed, that I would endeavour to continue to unpack it. And that's where you're really understanding a pre-departure training as not a tick box, but as the beginning of a learning journey that's going to take you from wherever you are now to another place, to another context, and where there's infinite opportunities for learning and for exchange and for new kinds of relationships.
Excellent. There's so many profound elements, I think, to the pre-departure that often go overlooked, so it's brilliant for you to highlight those. I think they're all excellent points. And you mentioned the benefits. It's not just for the volunteer, I think you mentioned a few times there. So who really gains from a good pre-departure preparation?
I think COLOV will always look at any education training supports for volunteer within a bigger picture. So we'll always think about the volunteer and the volunteer's connection to the sending agency or the sending organisation, the volunteer's connection to the hosting organisation. So these three actors are an integral part of any supports that we offer or that we facilitate for volunteers. So ultimately, any preparatory work or investment that you make in preparing a volunteer is going to reap benefits for the host organisation and for the wider community, if you begin to think about that individual as someone who's not only working in an office or in a project, but also within a community and living there for whatever amount of time it might be. So the benefits of having a volunteer who feels stable in themselves, secure, but also open enough to learn and to continually expand their mind. This is a volunteer that is going to make a valuable contribution where they go, and is also going to be the kind of volunteer who can bring learnings back, and who will likely remain engaged in the kinds of global development issues that projects like this one are aiming to tackle.
Perfect.